statement and state of affairs. Mr. Speaker said the statement that I'm presenting is to comply with subsection 2 of section 7 of the Public Finance Management Act, which requires me, and I want to quote, to provide full and transparent accounts from time to time and not less than annually to Parliament, indicating the current and projected state of the economy, the public resources of Zimbabwe, and the fiscal policy of the government. Pursuant to this, Mr. Speaker, the fiscal policy review updates the nation on the fiscal and economic developments during the first half of the year, concurrently also providing progress on the implementation of the 2014 national budget, which is anchored on the Zimbabwe agenda for sustainable socio-economic transformation. Mr. Speaker said, measures proposed through the monetary policy statement recently issued by the Reserve Bank complement this statement. The review provides the economic outlook to December 2014 and proposes measures supportive of the positive performance of the economy. With respect to global developments, Mr. Speaker said, the review also provides a brief on global economic developments given the linkages that exist between our economy and the rest of the world. The World Economic Outlook, Mr. Speaker, forecasts global economic growth for this year at 3.4%, an improvement from 3% last year. The improvement reflects enhanced economic activity in advanced, emerging, and developing economies, as indicated in the chart over there. With respect to domestic economic development and outlook, Mr. Speaker said, agriculture remained the bigger driver of the economy during the first half of this year. This was on account of an improved agricultural season, benefiting from the good rainfall season and improved funding arrangements. As a result, tobacco output surpassed the initial target of 171 million kg to record 215.2 million kgs. Inflows of earnings from tobacco sales amounted to $678.3 million as at the end of July 2014. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, maize output recorded 1.46 million tons from the original target of 1.3 million tons. And also the chart overhead demonstrates that there was increase in output almost across the board with respect to the majority of the crops that are listed there. Improved crop outputs were also registered with respect to cotton, sorghum, cane sugar, and soybeans, among others. Mr. Speaker said, with respect to mining, weak international prices for some metals, frequent power outages, obsolete equipment, and inadequate funding for recapitalization undermined performance during the first half of the year. With regards to diamonds, the adoption of the open auction marketing system beginning this year resulted in improvement in diamond price realizations. In this regard, average prices for diamonds rose from about $33 per carat to as high as $76 per carat. With respect to gold, honorable members will be aware that government designated Fidelity Printers and refineries as the sole buyer, refiner, and exporter of gold. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased with Fidelity's execution of this mandate. As at August 2014, a total of 8.5 tons of gold was refined and exported. Fidelity has established gold buying centers in the active gold buying areas throughout the country, as again the chart overhead will show. In addition, for added convenience, Fidelity Printers and Refineries has also licensed custom millers and illusion plant owners as its gold buying agents, thereby expanding gold buying centers coverage. Mr. Speaker, I'm inviting all those with active illusion plants and milling centers who, for one reason or another, have not been appointed gold buying agents by Fidelity Printers and Refineries and issued with a valid agent's license to approach Fidelity for accreditation as agents. Accordingly, there should therefore not be any gold milling center or illusion plant operating in the country which should not be found on the Fidelity Printers gold delivery list by end of this year. This is so because it has been observed that the largest source of leakage is around illusion plants and milling centers. Hence the need to ensure all register with Fidelity. So far, I'm pleased to note that a notable improvement in the gold mobilized from the small-scale gold sector has been noted following implementation of the above arrangements. Mr. Speaker, for manufacturing, the favorable agricultural season is anticipated to spur positive growth in agro-processing. Growth in tourism is benefiting from the prevailing political stability in the country. Investment in tourism facilities and infrastructure, revamping of domestic flights capacity, all complemented by investment in marketing campaigns. The increasing participation of locals is also serving to support the recovery of tourism performance. Tourism has also benefited from conference businesses during the first 8 months of this year, with the country successfully hosting a number of conferences, including Roots Africa, the SADC Summit, and the growing religious conferences. Government interventions with regards to fiscal incentives have also underpinned tourism investment refurbishment programs. Mr. Speaker, with respect to communication, developments in the ICT sector during the first half of the year show significant investments in network expansion and fiber optic infrastructure. As a result, total mobile subscribers have increased from 13.6 million to reach 13.9 million subscribers as at the end of June this year, raising the mobile penetration rate to 106.4%. Mr. Speaker, in line with the experiences of advanced and growing economies such as China, India, and Brazil, the future of our economic progress will also be dependent on the adoption and adaptation of domestic production structures to more modern technological systems and processes. In my 2015 budget, I hope to make some policy interventions to encourage research and development. Prices, Mr. Speaker, have remained reasonably flat, except for services such as education and health. Mr. Speaker, so with respect to exports, during the period from January to June, total exports stood at 1.2 billion, compared to 1.5 billion realized in the corresponding period in 2013. The decline in exports during this period reflects in part slowdown in commodity prices. With respect to imports, while the total imports for the first half of the year are down on last year, relatively these remain high at 3 billion. Corresponding imports for last year were 3.9 billion. Fuel, foodstuffs, machinery and equipment, wood, paper and plastic, and motor vehicles were the major imports as indicated in the chart over there. The 16% share of food, tobacco and beverages in total imports indicates the over-reliance on items that can be produced domestically. With respect to trade balance, Mr. Speaker, against the background of slowdown in imports, a lower trade deficit of 1.8 billion was recorded for the period January to June this year, compared to 2.4 billion for the same period last year. Mr. Speaker, Zimbabwe remains saddled with an unsustainable external debt overhang amounting to 8.8 billion as at the end of June 2014, necessitating the need to implement a debt resolution strategy. As reported in the Monetary Policy Statement of 25th August 2014, the financial sector remains stable, with the total banking sector deposits growing by 4.9% from 4.73 billion in December last year to reach 4.96 billion as at end of June this year. Developments in public finances, Mr. Speaker, said the first half of the year has been challenging in terms of revenue underperformance. Cumulative revenue collections for the period January to June 2014 amounted to 1.735 billion, against a target of 1.847 billion, resulting in a shortfall of $112 million, which is 6.1% of the total projected revenue. The breakdown of the overall contributions to total revenue is reflected in the pie chart over the wall. And this pie chart indicates that the biggest contributor to tax revenue as a source is value-added tax at 26%. And pay-as-you-earn coming a close second with 25%. And excise duty at 14%, and corporate income tax at 10%, and so on. Corporate tax was also under target by 17.7 million, while mineral royalty payments recorded a negative variance of 10.8 million. On the positive side, Mr. Speaker, pay-as-you-earn, which relates to income tax on individuals, surpassed the target by 83.5 million. The Zimbabwe Revenue Authority has been implementing measures to recover unremitted tax from both the private and public sector. This is being broadened to embrace those previously trading outside the tax rate, including those trading informally. Mr. Speaker, with respect to expenditures, government expenditure for the first half of this year, inclusive of loan repayments, amounted to 1.953 billion. This is against targeted expenditures of 1.848 billion. And the table reflects where the money went to. The expenditure profile for the first half of the year is not in tandem with planned expenditures, mainly on account of support to additional employment costs and loan repayments. Employment costs, which were originally targeted at 1.410 billion or 72.8%, shot up to 1.486%, 1.486 billion rather, or 76.1%. And the figure over the wall shows that of our expenditures, 76.1 is going to wages, and very little going to working capital or to operations. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, loan repayments which were not provided for recorded an outtake of $180.4 million. On employment costs, Mr. Speaker, the outtake on employment costs of 1.486 billion for the first half of this year was against the background of the remuneration review effective January and which we implemented in April this year. Payments towards loan repayments amounting to 180.4 million alluded to above were targeted at unlocking new and additional loan facilities critical for supporting takeoff of Zim asset development projects. Mr. Speaker said it will be recalled that the 2014 budget statement indicated that government will take over the Reserve Bank debt which arose from the bank's quasi-fiscal activities. In line with this pronouncement, a debt assumption bill to provide the legal framework for the assumption of this debt by government has since been drafted and is currently before this August House. In addition, validation and reconciliation of the debt by the Zimbabwe Aid and Management Office is ongoing. The amount of validated Reserve Bank debt as at end of July 2014 is $200.4 million. And pursuant to the debt validation by the debt office, treasury bills are being issued against the debt owed to creditor institutions. The tenors for the TBs are 3, 4, and 5 years. To date, treasury bills amounting to $200.4 million have since been issued to various banks and institutions. With respect to the capital budget, the 2014 budget provided for total expenditures of $492 million to the end of the year. In this regard, cumulative capital disbursement to June 2014 only amounted to $130.1 million. Also in acknowledgement of the critical role of infrastructure in moving forward Zim asset-led transformation. The table, which is with capital disbursements, reflects where the $130 million have been disbursed. The disbursements have been complemented, Mr. Speaker said, by implementation of other budget projects funded through loan financing. Projects funded under loan financing include the Kariba South Power Expansion, the Victoria Falls Airport New Terminal and runway construction, medical equipment acquisition program for hospitals, Deka pumping station in Wange Power Station, Harare Road, Airport Road, dualization and equipment for agriculture mechanization program. With respect to the Harare Gromon scale of dualization, to date 13 kilometers out of the targeted 18.3 kilometers have been completed and opened to traffic, including 2 of the 3 bridges. Prioritization to complete the remaining sections should see this project completed during the remainder of this year. With respect to Toka Mukosi Dam, this is, Mr. Speaker said, one of the major dams that have been funded solely from the budget. A cumulative fiscal support of $163 million has already been made. We remain resolute to see the completion of the remaining works necessary for final completion of this project. This is estimated to require $38.5 million. In this regard, government is engaged to the cash flow requirements to cater for critical works that need to be undertaken before the onset of the next rains, that way guarantee the safety of the dam wall structure. Mr. Speaker said we have been able to compensate a total of 1,423 families out of a total of 3,324. And the balance of 1,901 families will be compensated, and the total amount is $7 million. AU Region 5 Games is Zimbabwe hosting 15 countries. That's very nice.
Agora eu já.
Como dá você que estava?
Vamos lá. Já se não, agora melhor. Pode?
Mas isso já.
Só na minha
Targeted works to be undertaken in preparation of these games are estimated to require 9 million. So far, resources amounting to 3.5 million have been availed towards the upgrading of the above facilities in Bulawayo, which will be hosting the AU Region 5 Games. Mr. Speaker said we have outstanding certificates. This is money still owing to contractors, and this amount up to end of June is 146 million. Failure to liquidate outstanding certificates has a negative ripple effect on contractors, throttling their capacity to undertake works elsewhere, some of whom end up facing litigation from creditors. It is on this account that the budget remains focused on avoiding the thin spreading of limited fiscal resources across too many projects. Mr. Speaker said, I have already alluded to various budget projects which are funded from loan funds, and the table graphically portrays that position. I've also made reference to Kariba South, which I'm happy to say His Excellency launched on Friday last week. This is a big project which will add an additional 300 megawatts to the national grid. Wange Thermal Power Station, Mr. Speaker, government has since resolved contractual problems surrounding implementation of Wange 7 and 8 Thermal Power Station by awarding the tender to Sino Hydro Corporation, following the cancellation of the initial tender awarded to China Machinery Engineering Company. With regards to ICT, I am pleased to report that government and the Export and Import Bank of China signed a concessional loan agreement for $218.9 million on 25th August 2014 for the network expansion phase 2 project. Mr. Speaker said the Guai-Shangani Dam government has been financing this construction of this dam. So far, we have disbursed $15.8 million. Pursuant to expediting the dam construction, government has since secured a $53 million loan facility from China Africa Sunlight Energy Company, a joint venture company implementing the Guai Integrated Coal Mine and Thermal Power Station in the Guai area. The loan repayments to CASECO are to be set off against future sales of water from the dam. Government is upgrading the Victoria Falls Airport under a $150 million loan facility from China Exim Bank. To date, an amount of $19.5 million has been expended on the project. The project is expected to be complete by June next year and will be commissioned by December next year. The Deka pumping station to supply water to Wange Thermal Power Station, this is being done through a loan of $28.6 million which were secured from Import and Export Bank of India. This project will be completed next year. Harare Airport Road dualization following the collapse of the 2007 joint venture agreement between the city of Harare and Oga Investments, we have been forced to take over this project. Construction by the Department of State Roads of 2 roundabouts and the remainder of the section between Glenara and Harare Drive is now underway at an estimated cost of $13.2 million. Completion of roadworks is expected to be done by December this year. Government is committed to capacitating the Department of State Roads through acquisition of state-of-the-art road equipment as we move towards giving greater responsibility to the Department of State Roads for the construction of state roads. This will also entail putting in place incentives to attract back home Zimbabwean engineers currently working in the diaspora. Mr. Speaker said, agriculture mechanization. In my 2014 budget statement, I reported that government had mobilized $98.6 million earmarked for agriculture mechanization for sustainable food security. I am pleased to report to honorable members that shipments under the first tranche and valued at $38.6 million have commenced. Honorable members will be aware of the commitment in 2011 of the rehabilitation of the 820-kilometer highway from Plumtree, Harare, and to Mutare, including construction of 9 toll gates plazas along the highway. To date, 615 kilometers of the road has been completed, with the section of 201 kilometers between Plumtree and Shangani having been handed over to Infralink, the joint venture company between Zinara and Group 5. Toll gate plazas have been completed at Fiji, Street of Somabula, Kadoma, Norton, and Lusaka. And the one at Mutare is nearly completion. While works are underway for the toll gates to be erected at Goromonti and Gweru. The number of investors, Mr. Speaker, have shown interest in undertaking various infrastructure projects under the joint venture framework, which the Cabinet Committee on Infrastructure and Utilities is considering. To facilitate such schemes, government is finalizing the legal framework for consideration by Parliament through a joint ventures bill. On its part, the budget will provide the resources for implementing agencies to undertake feasibility studies for targeted projects. I set out, Mr. Speaker, the contribution by government partners, members of the site, amount of $144 million contributed by government partners and will be given country by country. Mr. Speaker, the government remains grateful for the support it is receiving from all the development partners as well as African Development Bank, which is managing ZIMFAD. With respect to parastatal performance, Mr. Speaker, most of our key public enterprises continue to underperform, in the process incurring deficits and remaining an albatross around the neck of the fiscus. The poor performance of public entities is to a large extent attributable to weak corporate governance systems and resistance to reform proposals by management. Cooperating partners, I've already acknowledged, Mr. Speaker, said the positive role cooperating partners continue to play with regards to complementing budget efforts over the capital budget through ZIMFAD. We have also, Mr. Speaker, said, engaged the multilateral institutions, and we are paying token payments to demonstrate our commitment to honoring our international obligations. Before the end of the year, Mr. Speaker, said, I hope to start token payments to the European Investment Bank, whose debt amounts to $314, of which 238 million are in arrears. We have also received, Mr. Speaker, support from bilateral cooperative partners. The table demonstrates and gives the country by country the level of support that we receive. We have also support from the multilateral institutions, and we also give in the chart a breakdown, organization by organization, the support that we've received. Mr. Speaker, of the above support by multilateral agencies, allow me to highlight initiatives supported under the Global Fund. Honorable members will be aware that the Global Fund mobilizes resources targeting interventions towards HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, as well as programs strengthening health systems. Between January and June this year, Zimbabwe benefited from the Global Fund support to the tune of $101.9 million, which we deployed towards strengthening the country's health systems as well as mitigating the effects of the diseases. The current arrangement is that all support from the Global Fund is channeled through UNDP. I've already mentioned, Mr. Speaker, that with respect to the European Development Bank, Zimbabwe stands to gain from full normalization of development cooperation with the European Union under the 11th European Development Fund. In this regard, the lapse of Article 96 of the Cotonou Agreement sanctions on 1st November 2014 as promised offers opportunity for this. Mr. Speaker, with respect to macroeconomic framework, we have had to revise our growth target for this year from 6.1% to 3.1%. Mostly because of the underperformance of the mining and manufacturing and tourism sectors. The slowdown in growth is also reflected in reduced revenue collections, depressed exports and imports. Mr. Speaker, with respect to budget revision, I've already indicated, Mr. Speaker, that the 2014 national budget has incurred expenditures outside budgeted levels. In this regard, some boards will end up exceeding the originally approved appropriations, necessitating revision of the 2014 national budget. This entails presentation of the revised budget to Parliament in terms of Section 305 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Mr. Speaker, allow me now to propose some policy interventions for implementation as part of the review of the 2014 national budget. The proposed policy interventions, Mr. Speaker, will embrace the following areas: support for agriculture, support for domestic industry, facilitation of foreign investor partnerships, clarity on indigenization, demonetization, continuation of the use of the multi-currency system, formalization of business activities for tax purposes, additional revenue measures in support of the 2014 budget, review of public procurement, parastatal reforms, and debt resolution strategy. I begin with support for agriculture. Mr. Speaker, let me again reiterate the importance of timely preparations for the success of the forthcoming 2014-2015 agricultural season. This is more so in view of the recent weather forecast from the SADC weather experts, who predict for most of the region, including Zimbabwe, normal to above normal rainfall during the first half of the season, that is October to December this year, and normal to below normal rainfall conditions during the second half of the season, January to March. In particular, the southern parts of the country are forecast to experience effects of mid-season drought. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, government is establishing mitigatory measures to counter the impact of dry spells in the shorter second half rainfall period by ensuring early accessibility to inputs and support for early planting. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, government is setting aside the resources in support of cloud seeding in order to enhance the increased rainfall during the anticipated dry spells. Mr. Speaker, the successful 2013-2014 agricultural season benefited from timely interventions by government under the $160 million support for the communal urban settlement A1 and small-scale farmers. It is therefore necessary that similar support frameworks be put in place in preparation for the 2014 to 2015 agricultural system. Pursuant to this, and to improve food security at both household and national levels, and consistent with the objectives and priorities of CIMASA, government in collaboration with other key stakeholders, such as input suppliers, financiers and farmers, is putting in place various financing strategies in support of the coming season. On his part, Mr. Speaker said, government is mobilizing $252.3 million towards the presidential input scheme in support of agriculture under the programs for the coming season. Government will capacitate 1.6 million communal old resettlement, former small-scale purchase areas, and A1 households to be self-sufficient in food through provision of agriculture inputs valued at $184.8 million. The inputs package is targeted at grain producers, both maize and small grains, and valued at $115.5 per household, and will comprise the following: a pack of 10 kg of seed, that is maize or small grains, 50 kg of double compound D, and 50 kg of ammonium nitrate. Mr. Speaker said, small grain seed packs will also draw from repacking of stocks already sold to GMB, currently estimated at 2,534 tons. In other words, Mr. Speaker said, what we have received, what we have bought in terms of small grains will be repackaged into seed packs, because we always run short of seeds of that nature. Cotton input pack. To value add, you must have material. You must have the raw material. In order to facilitate value addition, as we have pronounced in our CIMASA document, government is going to support cotton production. Therefore, an input pack for about 300,000 cotton farmers will be availed to cover half a hectare of cotton. The cotton input pack, which will be valued at $33 per household, will comprise of chemicals. Mr. Speaker said, government acknowledges the need to capacitate input suppliers to supply seed and fertilizer in support of the forthcoming season. In this regard, government in collaboration with the World Bank is supporting the mobilization of resources towards this effort. With respect to A2 and other farmers, government acknowledges the role of the banking sector in supporting A2 and other farmers in view of its limited financing capacity. In this regard, the Reserve Bank is engaging the financial services sector in establishing credit facilities under direct bank extension, credit extension to the farmer. Furthermore, we are encouraging contract farming arrangements which will also be available to such crops as tobacco, cotton, soybeans, barley, among others. Mr. Speaker said, we have and we continue to give support to the purchase of grain. And I'm happy to say that as of now, already 150,000 tons of maize has been delivered to GMB. And to date, we have already paid for 78,067 tons of maize deliveries to GMB. and we remain committed to paying the balance of whatever is delivered to us. Support for domestic industry. We wanted to encourage competitiveness of our industry. Measures in support of the competitiveness of domestic industry will embrace a sectoral approach. Priority in terms of support will be given to strategic companies. This will be guided by the substitution effect, capacity of local industries, and import concentration. In this regard, targeted areas include the following, among others: motor industries, beverages, agricultural commodities, clothing, and leather. Mr. Speaker, due to an oversight, I omitted the support we are going to give to livestock farmers. We are supporting 1.6 million households. Communal A1, old settlement, who own cattle. And the support is going to be $32 per household, and will comprise 500 grams thick grease, 1 liter of dewormer, and 500 mils of wound remedy. We are seeking to support all those crops which have value chains which we can exploit in terms of employment creation. And one such crop we are seeking to support for the first time, albeit a modest support, is soybeans. In pursuit of realizing the value addition and food nutrition as pronounced in Zimaset, government is supporting soybean production. We are targeting the same number of households, 1.6 million households, and will give to each 2 kg of seed, which will be valued at $6.4 million. Mr. Speaker said, we have suffered a lot of leakages at our borders, and efforts will be made to enforce and eliminate leakages. We are also going to target support to exports, and my 2015 budget will set out the incentives that we are going to give to those who are exporters. Government efforts in support of the domestic industry, re-equipment and retooling initiatives will benefit from initiatives that we are currently doing to broker additional lines of credit. It is necessary, Mr. Speaker, for government to continue championing the implementation of ongoing doing business reforms. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, an interministerial committee is already in place to tease out on these issues. It is clear to me, Mr. Speaker, that there is need for synchronization of investment legal instruments and regulations to establish an investor-friendly environment, also ensuring that the country receives true and fair value in joint venture arrangements. Mr. Speaker, over the years, informal business ventures, which in the 2014 budget statement I referred to as the new economy, have become a key source of productivity, growth, and job creation in the economy. A development which facilitates distribution of economic activities and fostering equitable income distribution. Their performance and the environment in which they perform are an important factor for economic development. In this regard, government will continue supporting the formalization of such business ventures, including measures to simplify the registration process for small business operations and maintenance of a database under the Office of the Registrar of Companies. We are also committed, Mr. Speaker, to facilitating foreign investor partnerships. They will benefit from the way we clarify our indigenization provisions. With respect to indigenization, Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed seemingly contradictory interpretations of our indigenization and economic empowerment policy, which have nurtured negative country perceptions, which in turn have been used to undermine potential investment into the country. This notwithstanding that the guiding legal framework actually provides for sector-specific indigenization and empowerment policies. And we must remain indebted to the former minister and also to the current minister for basically drawing our attention that the legal framework is adequate. What remains is basically publicizing what is already in the law. There is no one-size-fits-all, there is a sector-by-sector approach. And also above all, Mr. Speaker, compliance is through many ways, as set out in the legislation, listing on the Zimbabwe sovereignty, implementation of programs which empower local communities, which already have been done, compliance points being part of incentive packages which can be offered to investors who invest in niche sectors of the economy, joint ventures, contract farming and land use agreements, and build, operate, transfer projects. Mr. Speaker, it is my hope that the minister administering this piece of legislation will give the necessary clarification by way of a notice in the Government Gazette in terms of Section 5, subsection 4 of the regulations. Women empowerment. Zim Asset prioritizes mechanisms and measures which ensure effective participation of women in various empowerment programs. In the financial sector, we are proposing to set up a deposit-taking microfinance women's bank. The proposed women's bank will complement other ongoing women empowerment programs. On demonetization, Mr. Speaker, honorable members will recall that in the 2014 National Budget Statement, government indicated that it shall be proceeding to put in place measures to demonetize the local currency on the basis in which the nation converted books of accounts in 2009. The amount to be spent on this exercise will be guided by, among other factors, balances with banks, taking into account even those bank balances which were rendered nil as a result of hyperinflation, as well as any balances at the central bank and the Zim dollar balances outside the banking system. The information on balances with the banks and the central bank is already secured by name and by account by the Reserve Bank. With regards to amounts of cash outside the banking system, the Reserve Bank will be publishing detailed surrender processes. Continuation of the use of the multi-currency system. Mr. Speaker, government is very consistent on the continuity of the use of the multi-currency system in the country, as clearly spelled out in the monetary statement by the Reserve Bank. Government has no appetite, and I repeat, we have no appetite to change this policy, and I would urge the nation to take comfort in this continuous reassurance from both the monetary and fiscal authorities. The pronouncement of special foreign coins to provide small change, as announced in the monetary statement under a US dollar bond facility by the Reserve Bank, is a clear testimony meant to buttress the multi-currency system and to enhance business confidence. In dealing with public enterprise risk reform, we have challenges in our public enterprises, and a review of the legal framework governing parastatals is unavoidable. Review of the legal framework will be necessary to deal with concerns over public entities' management of public resources, poor governance arrangements, deployment of resources to non-priority areas at the expense of service delivery and the entities' core mandates. Mr. Speaker, said the remuneration policy framework for state enterprises, parastatals, and local authorities to address remuneration anomalies is being finalized and will be in place by end of October this year. The Auditor General is already engaged to carry out audits whose outcome will inform on the appropriate remedial measures to be instituted to establish remuneration levels of management as well as members. With respect to procurement regulations, the current procurement framework has resulted in concerns with respect to the following: delays in finalizing procurement processes, the negative impact of cost escalations arising from such delays, absence of mechanisms to hold non-performing contractors to account. It is therefore necessary that the Procurement Act be reviewed to tighten the public procurement framework and make it more efficient and transparent. I will be submitting with respect to the debt resolution strategy. I will be submitting to Cabinet soon a debt strategy roadmap for Cabinet's consideration and approval in the forthcoming fourth month. We continue to lobby, Mr. Speaker said, we continue to lobby for the removal of sanctions by the US and the European Union. I must hasten to point out, Mr. Speaker, like I've alluded to earlier in my statement, that the European Union has promised that the Article 96 sanctions will lapse on 1st of November this year. So we hope that the promise will be fulfilled. We remain engaged with the IMF, and I need to point out, Mr. Speaker, that the IMF has indicated that they are broadly satisfied with our performance. And in fact, they've now come back after a 10-year absence. They opened an office here and sent a representative here in July this year. We are going to have to commit, Mr. Speaker, we are going to have to commit some resources towards raising ZIM asset awareness so that we can carry our population with us as we implement this very important document, economic blueprint. On Ebola preparedness, Mr. Speaker, the emergency and ongoing spread of Ebola outbreak in West Africa, a highly communicable and severe disease, requires that Zimbabwe, in collaboration with its regional SADC partners, further enhances urgent response capacity to combat the potential spread of this health hazard. In this regard, government has recently established an interministerial task force on Ebola with a mandate to strengthen national response systems. Focus is on, among others, risk mapping, infection control mechanisms, training and sensitization of health and related personnel, screening at ports of entry, education, and information dissemination. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the respective revenue measures. Mr. Speaker, the revenue measures that I am presenting seek to build on the existing measures that government has already implemented in support of the productive sectors. The measures also seek to enhance revenue, to curb the influx of non-essential imports, as well as to strengthen tax administration. Let me start, Mr. Speaker, with revenue enhancing measures. Mr. Speaker, a number of organizations remunerate employees through fringe benefits, which include cash and non-cash payments over and above their salaries and wages. These benefits range from the use of a company vehicle or accommodation, access to low-interest loans and other subsidized or discounted goods and services, amongst others. In order to restore equity and fairness to those employees who do not receive fringe benefits, and also to enable the tax administration to fairly assess taxpayer liability. Gross income includes any amount equal to the value of an advantage or benefit in respect of employment, service, office, or other gainful occupation. Now, whereas the Income Tax Act obliges employers to deduct and remit pay as you earn to ZIMRA, the trend that has been observed, especially in public enterprises, is that fringe benefits were not being subjected to employees' tax as is required by the law. Consequently, public enterprises incurred unnecessary expenditure on penalties and interest on unlimited tax, which is supposed to be recouped from employees. Due to the governance structure, Mr. Speaker, whereby the affected employees are mainly the management, there has been unwillingness to recover the assessed tax from the employees. Notwithstanding the current provisions that compel ZIMRA to recover outstanding tax from the employer, I am proposing, Mr. Speaker, to further empower ZIMRA to collect the assessed tax directly from the employees or board members who are currently serving, have resigned, or retired from the institution. The tax amnesty. Mr. Speaker, the economic challenges experienced over the past decade have resulted in a number of companies neglecting their tax obligations in order to fund their operations. In some instances, potential taxpayers have totally avoided registering for tax purposes with ZIMRA, thereby accumulating unrecorded debts. In order to encourage taxpayers to voluntarily regularize their tax affairs, I'm proposing, Mr. Speaker, sir, that His Excellency the President grants a limited amnesty to all taxpayers who disclose their tax obligations within a period of 6 months, and also to pay what they owe within a period of 6 months. The amnesty will cover all taxpayers in respect of their tax obligations for the period beginning 1st of February 2009 to 30th September 2014, without any further extension. To facilitate disclosure, the whistleblower facility will be suspended during the amnesty period. Furthermore, no penalties and interest will accrue on the tax obligations within the period of the amnesty, that is from 1st February 2009 to 30th September 2014. This amnesty, Mr. Speaker, said, takes effect from 1st October 2014. On excise duty on fuel, excise duty on diesel and petrol is currently pegged at 25 and 30 cents per litre respectively. In order to raise additional revenues to finance inescapable expenditures, I propose to increase excise duty on diesel and petrol from 25 and 30 cents per litre to 30 and 35 cents per litre respectively, with effect from 15 September Telecommunications airtime. Mr. Speaker said, as I've already mentioned, the government faces a challenge to raise additional revenue to finance non-discretionary expenditures. I'm therefore proposing to levy excise duty of 5% on airtime for voice and data with effect from 15 September 2014. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, that the government reduced rates of customs duty on mobile handsets with effect from 1st of August 2009. In recognition of access to information as an essential tool to enhance decision making and also to encourage the development of information communication technology in line with international trends. Handset purchases have increased significantly, and mobile telephone penetration rates have also increased substantially to over 100%. Customs duty reduction has thus achieved its intended purpose. I therefore propose to levy customs duty on importation of mobile handsets at the rate of 25% with effect from 1st of October 2014. On housing rentals, fees and charges play an important role in augmenting tax revenues necessary to enhance delivery. It is thus important to continuously review these fees and charges, taking account of developments in the economy, in particular increased costs for provision of services. Rentals for housing units under the National Housing and National Guarantee Funds were last reviewed in 2010. The current rentals for housing units range from $20 to $500 per month. Consequently, revenue collected from rentals is not adequate to maintain the respective properties, the majority of which are now in a dilapidated state. I'm therefore proposing to review rentals to cost recovery levels in order to raise adequate funds to refurbish and also maintain the housing units with effect from 1st October 2014. The proposed fees exclude utilities. 99-year list. Mr. Speaker said 99-year lists offer entitlement and security of tenure. The long-term nature of the lease enables farmers to commit resources towards substantive investments, thereby enhancing viability of agriculture. Efforts by government to mobilize resources to undertake land surveys have, however, not yielded adequate revenue. In order to expedite issuance of the 99-year lists, I propose that any two beneficiaries of the land reform contribute towards the cost of survey of the land allocated. With respect to measures in support of the productive sector, export tax on raw hides. Honorable members will be aware that government introduced an export tax of 70 cents per kg on raw hides with effect from 1 January this year in order to encourage value addition. A review of the measure is, however, revealed a challenge whereby some companies entered into prior contracts containing penalties on unscheduled opt-out clauses with international companies. They thus had exported raw hides between January to March this year before promulgation of the Finance Act. Furthermore, the local tanneries have inadequate capacity to process raw hides, resulting in excess supply, which does not have a local market. In order to mitigate the closure of companies that had forward contracts and also boost incomes of smallholder farmers from the sale of excess raw hides and skins, I'm proposing to exempt from export tax the sale of raw hides and skins for the period January to December this year. Furthermore, in line with the Zimbabwe leather sector strategy, export tax of 15% will apply on exports of raw hides other than domesticated animals such as goats and sheep beyond the export quota stipulated. I further propose, Mr. Speaker, to exempt crocodile skins from export tax, since there is no local capacity to value add this type of raw hides at this moment. Motor industry. Mr. Speaker, Imports of motor vehicles for the period January to June this year account for about 10% of the import bill. This is despite the existence of capacity by the local assembly plants to produce light commercial vehicles, buses, double cabs, and passenger motor vehicles. And I give the graph there showing year by year the imports of motor vehicles. A lot of foreign currency is channeled towards importation of motor vehicles to the detriment of local motor vehicle assembly plants, which are currently operating at below 1%. In line with Zima's strategic plus to enhance value addition and beneficiation, I am proposing to increase customs duty on the following range of motor vehicles in order to complement efforts by the local motor industry. It's on the chart. The measure, Mr. Speaker, which I just mentioned, will take effect from 1st of November. With respect to textiles and clothing, in view of the opportunity for the growth of the clothing industry, government will effect from 1st January. Government, with effect from 1st of January 2013, granted a rebate of duty on imported raw materials for use in the manufacture of clothing, provided that such raw materials are not produced locally. The clothing industry, however, remains uncompetitive, mainly due to high costs of producing arising from unsustainable labor and utility costs, as well as competition from low-value imports and second-hand clothes. These challenges are exacerbated by rent-seeking behavior at ports of entry, which results in importation of finished goods under the guise of raw materials, under invoicing and transit fraud, among others. In order to discourage minimum value addition through cut and trim, I propose to levy customs duty on blankets imported as raw materials with effect from 1st October 2014. Blankets were basically, Mr. Speaker, being imported as raw material. And all that was required was that they just cut and trim. So I'm imposing a duty on blankets imported as raw material. With respect to mining, Mr. Speaker, royalty on gold, the mining sector has shown enormous potential to be the centerpiece of economic recovery and growth. Hence, exploitation of existing deposits has to be intensified. Government also recognizes the potential for small-scale gold miners to significantly contribute towards the growth of the economy. Hence, a lower royalty rate of 3% on small-scale gold producers whose output does not exceed 0.5 kg per month was introduced with effect from 1st January this year. International prices of precious metals, in particular gold, however, remain subdued, thereby threatening the viability of most of the mining houses. I therefore propose to review downwards royalty on gold produced by primary producers from 7 to 5%. I also propose to reduce the presumptive tax on small-scale gold miners to 0% from the current 2%. These measures will take effect from 1st October 2014. Mr. Speaker, we have been mobilizing funds for low-cost housing development, and in pursuance of the national housing policy's objectives of providing decent accommodation, government supported mobilization of resources through a tax-free saving instrument issued by building societies. The instrument generated funds for on-lending towards low-cost housing at prescribed interest rates. But we continue to experience a housing backlog, which is estimated to over 1 million units, due to rising demand in urban and resettled areas. Delivery of housing has been constrained by a number of factors, in particular lack of access to housing finance. In order to facilitate mobilization of resources for low-cost housing projects, I propose to exempt from tax interest earned on a savings instrument that will be issued by financial institutions involved in mortgage financing, and this will take effect from 1st of November 2014. The features of the financial instrument will include the following: a fixed term deposit, tax exemption status, prescribed rate of return, and a cap on the amount that can be invested. With respect to current account deficit, Mr. Speaker, although the government has been implementing a tariff regime that endeavors to balance the sustainability of our balance of payments and supporting the competitiveness of our local industry, imported goods, however, continue to surge, amounting to about 3 billion during the first half of this year. The bulk of the imports are finished goods, most of which are already produced locally. These include cooking oil, poultry, soap, maize meal, flour, beverages, dairy produce, furniture, sugar, fresh and canned foods and vegetables, amongst others. The influx of imports thus continues to undermine growth of the agricultural sector and the recovery of the local industry. I have set out in the graph there just an indication, item by item, with respect to the level of inputs of those products. I'm therefore proposing, Mr. Speaker, in response to this issue, to review the duty structure on the following products: meat and edible meat offers. Can you show the chart? The details will appear in the full statement, Mr. Speaker. I'm also proposing intervention with respect to dairy produce. Again, the details will appear. Also, vegetables and miscellaneous edible preparations. Also, the beverages. Also, with respect to mineral products. Also with respect to the software responsibilities, the measures that I ask honorable members to follow in the full statement will take effect from 1st October 2014. Mr. Speaker said, with respect to duty-free certificates for use by government departments, in order to facilitate the effective operation of government, essential goods for the exclusive use of government that are not available locally may be imported free of duty, provided a certificate issued by the responsible authority, ministry, is furnished to Zimmer. It has, however, been noted, Mr. Speaker, that some government duty-free certificates are being used to import items such as foodstuffs, washing preparations, and beverages, thereby undermining value addition efforts by the local industry as envisaged under Zimmer's. I therefore propose, Mr. Speaker, to remove the following goods from the duty-free certificate facility, and this will take effect from 1st of October. And removing the free duty certificates from the importation of foodstuffs, washing preparations, and beverages. Rebate of duty on goods imported by charitable or welfare organizations. Mr. Speaker said, government recognizes the complementary role of charitable or welfare organizations in the provision of relief supplies, particularly in areas, in cases where drought and natural disasters occur.
There was a cross-border exchange between Honorable Chibaya and Wajda General. Stop, please. You are disturbing the minister. Deliver.
The government did provide to welfare organizations a rebate of duty on goods imported for free distribution among persons in need or donations imported by associations involved in charitable or relief organizations. It has, however, been observed that some of the imported goods are produced locally. You find welfare organizations importing milk from outside when there's milk. In those instances, Mr. Speaker, I'm proposing to exclude selected foodstuffs imported by welfare organizations from rebate of duty in order to encourage growth of the local industry. The measure will take effect from 1st October 2014. Mr. Speaker, in order to enhance efficiency in the operation of the Revenue Authority, it is necessary to strengthen and simplify tax laws. I'm proposing a number of legislative amendments which will take effect from 1st October 2014. I've already made reference, Mr. Speaker, to the mortgage finance and the measures that we've already taken. With respect to withholding tax on tenders, Mr. Speaker, supplies by unregistered